Vanessa Blake thought she was humiliating a forgotten woman in an old cream sweater, but within the next hour, the entire boutique would realize they had just thrown out the woman who helped build their luxury empire from the ground up. The golden lights of Belladonna Boutique reflected against polished marble floors as shoppers drifted between glass displays filled with diamond necklaces and Italian handbags, worth more than most monthly mortgages. Soft piano music floated through the air beneath the faint scent of jasmine perfume and expensive leather. Every inch of the store was designed to whisper wealth, without ever raising its voice, and standing quietly near the entrance, Claire Whitmore looked completely out of place. At 36, Claire carried herself with a calm grace that came from years of learning how little appearances truly mattered. Her light brown hair rested loosely against her shoulders, and her cream sweaters lightly oversized paired with simple jeans and worn leather flats, made her resemble a tired schoolteacher more than the wife of one of Manhattan's most powerful billionaires. A faded canvas tote hung from her shoulder as she slowly walked deeper into the boutique, her fingers brushing softly against the edge of a display table. For just a moment, her expression shifted. Something about the curved gold fixtures and ivory walls stirred an old memory buried deep beneath years of silence. She remembered sketching ideas for displays on napkins in tiny coffee shops. She remembered choosing warm lighting because she wanted women to feel beautiful instead of intimidated. Back then, Belladonna had only been one tiny storefront downtown, before investors transformed it into a luxury empire. Claire paused near a necklace enclosed beneath crystal glass. A delicate sapphire pendant rested beneath the spotlight, elegant and understated. Her eyes softened as she studied it quietly. "That one just arrived from Milan," a gentle voice said nearby. Claire turned toward a young sales associate with kind eyes and a nervous smile. Her name tag read, "Lily Carter." "It's beautiful," Claire replied softly. Lily nodded. "It's actually one of my favorites, too." Before the young associate could continue, sharp heels clicked across the marble floor. Vanessa Blake appeared with the polished confidence of someone who believed luxury belonged only to certain people. Her fitted black blazer looked perfectly tailored, and her icy expression hardened the second her eyes landed on Claire's canvas bag and simple clothes. Vanessa's smile became painfully thin. "Lily," she interrupted coldly, "our private collection pieces are reserved for serious clients." The words hung in the air like quiet poison. Nearby shoppers subtly glanced over their shoulders. Claire remained still, her eyes steady, her voice calm. "I was only admiring it," she said gently. Vanessa crossed her arms. "Of course you were." The room suddenly felt colder. Claire could feel the eyes on her now. Not just Vanessa's sharp, dismissive stare, but the quiet curiosity spreading across the boutique like perfume drifting through the air. Wealthy shoppers pretended not to listen while secretly watching every second unfold. A woman in a white designer coat slowly lowered her champagne glass. Two men near the watch display exchanged amused smirks. The room had become a stage, and Vanessa Blake clearly enjoyed being at the center of it. "Belladonna prides itself on exclusivity," Vanessa continued smoothly, her voice carrying just enough volume to reach nearby customers. "We prefer to provide a certain experience for clients who are actually prepared to purchase." Lily shifted uncomfortably beside the display counter. "Ms. Blake," she said quietly, "she was only asking about the pendant." Vanessa did not even look at her. "And you are still in training, Lily, which means you do not interrupt management decisions." The younger employee immediately fell silent. Claire glanced once more at the sapphire pendant beneath the crystal glass. It was elegant, simple, timeless, exactly the kind of design she used to love years ago, before investors demanded larger stones and louder branding. For a brief moment, sadness flickered behind her calm expression. "I understand," Claire said softly. I was actually hoping to purchase a gift. Vanessa's perfectly shaped eyebrow lifted slightly. A gift? She repeated, almost amused. That particular necklace costs $48,000. The number landed heavily in the air. One customer quietly let out a small laugh. Another pretended to study a bracelet while clearly listening. Claire remained composed, though her fingers tightened slightly around the strap of her canvas bag. Vanessa stepped closer, lowering her voice into something colder. Perhaps our outlet location downtown would be more appropriate for your budget. Lily's face flushed with embarrassment. That is not necessary, she whispered carefully. But Vanessa had already decided what kind of woman Claire was the moment she walked through the door. To her, simple clothing meant small value. Quietness meant weakness, and kindness often looked too much like poverty to people obsessed with status. Claire slowly nodded. I see the company still values appearances above people. Vanessa gave a dry smile. Luxury businesses survive by maintaining standards. The sentence struck Claire harder than Vanessa realized, because 15 years earlier, standing in a tiny rented storefront with unpaid bills stacked on folding tables, Claire herself had written Belladonna's original mission statement in black ink across a legal pad. Luxury should make people feel welcomed, never judged. She still remembered every word, and now, hearing what the company had become, something inside her quietly broke. Vanessa motioned toward the front entrance with polished impatience. I think it would be best if you moved along, before this becomes uncomfortable for everyone. The room went silent. For a few seconds, nobody moved. The soft piano music continued drifting through the boutique, while tension settled over the marble floor like a storm cloud no one wanted to acknowledge. Claire stood quietly near the display counter, her posture calm despite the humiliation pressing against her from every direction. She had spent years learning that the cruelest judgments were often delivered with polished smiles and perfectly tailored clothing. Vanessa Blake adjusted the gold bracelet on her wrist and gave Claire a look that mixed irritation with superiority. I'm trying to avoid embarrassing you further, she said smoothly. Some environments simply are not designed for everyone. A man near the handbag section chuckled under his breath. Another customer whispered something to her friend while glancing openly at Claire's faded canvas tote. The atmosphere inside Belladonna had shifted completely now. Luxury no longer felt elegant, it felt sharp. Claire slowly inhaled, her eyes wandering across the boutique walls. She recognized the ivory wallpaper pattern instantly. She had chosen it herself during the company's first expansion almost 12 years earlier, because she believed softer tones made people feel safe. Near the ceiling, warm recessed lighting glowed against brushed gold trim she once argued passionately to include during a design meeting in Chicago. Every detail surrounding her carried pieces of a life almost nobody inside this store knew existed. Lily stepped forward cautiously. Maybe we could simply arrange a private consultation, she suggested carefully. I would be happy to help. Vanessa turned toward her with visible annoyance. Enough, Lily. Her sharp voice sliced through the silence. Do not waste company time entertaining fantasies. Claire lowered her gaze briefly. The words should not have hurt anymore. After years of boardrooms, investors, and social elites, she had grown used to people measuring human value by appearance. But hearing those words here inside a brand she once helped build, with sleepless nights and personal sacrifice, carried a different kind of pain. She remembered packing orders herself in a tiny back room during Belladonna's early days. She remembered surviving on coffee and 4 hours of sleep while trying to keep the business alive after her former business partner passed away unexpectedly. Back then, every customer mattered. Every woman walking through the door mattered. That had been the entire point. Vanessa finally folded her arms. Security has already been notified. The statement landed heavily in the room. Several shoppers looked away awkwardly now, uncomfortable that the situation had escalated this far. Lily's face paled. "Ms. Blake, please, this conversation is over." Claire looked toward the front windows where late afternoon sunlight spilled across the sidewalk outside. For the first time since entering the boutique, exhaustion touched her expression. Not anger, not humiliation, just disappointment. Deep, quiet disappointment. And somehow that was far more powerful. The room remained painfully silent. The security guard arrived a minute later, his polished black shoes echoing softly against the marble floor, as conversations inside the boutique faded into uneasy silence. He was a tall man in his 50s with tired eyes and the cautious expression of someone who understood far more than he was allowed to say. His gaze moved from Vanessa Blake's rigid posture to Claire standing quietly beside the jewelry display. For a brief moment, uncertainty crossed his face. "Is there a problem here?" he asked carefully. Vanessa answered before anyone else could speak. "This woman has been disrupting customers and refusing to leave." The statement was so cold, so effortlessly dishonest, that even a few nearby shoppers shifted uncomfortably. Claire did not defend herself. She simply reached into her canvas tote and carefully adjusted the folded scarf inside, as though preserving her dignity mattered more than preserving the argument. Lily looked horrified. "That is not what happened," she blurted out suddenly. Vanessa turned sharply. "Excuse me?" The younger employee swallowed hard but held her ground. "She has been polite the entire time." Vanessa's expression hardened instantly. "You are dangerously close to overstepping your position." The guard glanced toward Claire again. "Ma'am," he said gently, almost apologetically, "perhaps it would be best if we avoided further discomfort." Claire looked at him with calm understanding. Unlike Vanessa, this man was not trying to humiliate her. He was simply trapped inside someone else's cruelty. Slowly, she nodded. "Of course." Vanessa exhaled in visible satisfaction, as though she had just restored order to the world. Claire turned toward the entrance, her movements graceful despite the weight settling quietly across the room. As she passed the front display windows, her eyes briefly landed on a framed black and white photograph hanging near the entrance. It showed Belladonna's original flagship store from years ago. Most customers walked past it without a second glance, but Claire stopped for half a heartbeat. Her fingers tightened slightly at her side. In that photograph hidden behind a crowd during the grand opening was a younger version of herself, smiling beside her late business partner, Eleanor Grant. Before fame, investors and luxury transformed everything they once believed in. Vanessa noticed Claire pause and misunderstood it completely. "Do not make this more dramatic than it already is," she said sharply. Claire slowly looked back at her. Her expression remained soft, but something deeper had changed in her eyes now. Not anger, clarity. "You know," Claire said quietly, "Eleanor used to say a company reveals its soul by how it treats the people with the least status in the room." Vanessa frowned slightly. "I have no idea who that is." For the first time all afternoon, genuine sadness crossed Claire. "That," she whispered softly, "is exactly the problem." Then she stepped outside beneath the fading Manhattan sunlight, while the glass doors closed behind her, with a silence that somehow felt heavier than shouting. Cold autumn air brushed against Claire's face as she stepped onto Madison Avenue, leaving the golden lights of Belladonna glowing behind her like a memory that no longer belonged to her. The city moved around her in its usual rhythm. Yellow taxis rolled past crowded intersections. Steam drifted upward from subway grates. People hurried along sidewalks carrying shopping bags and coffee cups, without noticing the quiet heartbreak standing beside the boutique windows. Claire paused near the curb and looked back once more at the elegant black lettering above the entrance. Belladonna. For years the name had represented warmth, grace, and dignity to her. Now it felt hollow. She slowly reached into her canvas bag and pulled out her phone. The screen lit softly in her hands before she hesitated. She did not want revenge. That was the strange part. Vanessa Blake believed humiliation was power because she had probably spent her entire career surrounded by people terrified of appearing weak. But Claire had spent too many years building hospitals, scholarship programs, and women's shelters through the Whitmore Foundation to care about social status anymore. What hurt her was not the insult itself. It was watching kindness disappear from something she once loved. A black sedan moved past the intersection while evening shadows stretched across the street. Claire finally pressed a name on her screen. Ethan answered almost immediately. "Hey," he said warmly, his deep voice steady and familiar. "Did you find the anniversary gift?" Claire smiled faintly despite herself. "Not exactly." Ethan instantly heard the shift in her tone. 20 years together had taught him how to recognize silence better than words. "Claire," he said more carefully now, "what happened?" She leaned lightly against the cold stone wall beside the boutique window. "It is nothing serious." That usually means, "It is serious." For a moment she closed her eyes. "I went into Belladonna." Silence greeted her on the other end of the call. Then Ethan spoke quietly. "And?" Claire exhaled softly. "Apparently I no longer look like someone who belongs there." Across town, inside a glass conference room overlooking Midtown Manhattan, Ethan Whitmore slowly lowered the financial report in his hand. Several executives seated around the polished walnut table immediately noticed the subtle change in his expression. Ethan was known throughout New York for remaining calm under pressure. Markets could collapse around him and he would barely blink. But now something colder settled behind his eyes. "Did someone disrespect you?" he asked quietly. Claire remained gentle even now. "It is over. I already left." Ethan stood from the table without another word. The room instantly fell silent. One executive nervously adjusted his tie while another closed his laptop. They had seen this expression only once before years ago when a charity contractor attempted to exploit one of Claire's educational programs. Ethan picked up his suit jacket slowly. "Stay nearby," he said softly into the phone. "I am coming." And inside Belladonna Boutique, Vanessa Blake still had no idea, the storm already heading toward her. Inside Belladonna, the atmosphere slowly returned to normal, at least on the surface. Customers resumed sipping champagne while soft piano music drifted once again through the polished showroom. Vanessa Blake moved confidently between displays, reassuring clients with polished smile as though nothing unusual had happened. But beneath the luxury lighting, tension still lingered in the air like perfume that refused to fade. Lily Carter quietly reorganized jewelry trays near the sapphire pendant, though her hands trembled slightly. She could not stop thinking about Claire's face when she looked at the photograph near the entrance. There had been recognition there, not admiration, not nostalgia. Something deeper. "You are distracted," Vanessa said sharply as she approached. Lily hesitated. "I just do not think she deserved that." Vanessa let out a cold laugh beneath her breath. "Lily, if you survive long enough in luxury retail, you learn one thing very quickly. Appearances tell you everything." "Not always," Lily replied softly before she could stop herself. Vanessa's eyes narrowed instantly. "Careful." Before Lily could answer, movement outside the boutique windows suddenly drew attention across the showroom floor. A sleek black SUV slowly pulled up to the curb, directly in front of Belladonna. Then another one stopped behind it, and another. Conversations throughout the boutique began fading one by one as customers turned toward the glass entrance. The vehicles were not flashy in the way celebrity cars usually were. They were understated, expensive, and impossibly precise. the kind of vehicles owned by people who never needed to prove their wealth because everyone else already knew it. Vanessa frowned slightly. Who was that? One of the older clients near the entrance straightened immediately, recognizing the small silver emblem mounted near the license plate. "That is Whitmore Holdings Security," he whispered quietly. The words spread through the room like electricity. Lily looked toward the sidewalk just as the rear passenger door opened slowly. Ethan Whitmore stepped out, wearing a charcoal overcoat over his navy suit, his expression calm enough to frighten anyone paying attention. He moved with quiet authority, the kind built from decades of power rather than performance. 2 security personnel remained near the vehicles, while Ethan approached the entrance alone. Inside the boutique, employees immediately adjusted their posture. Vanessa herself smoothed her blazer and hurried toward the front doors, her entire demeanor transforming within seconds. "Oh my goodness," she whispered under her breath. "Why would Ethan Whitmore come here?" The glass doors opened softly as Ethan entered beneath the warm golden lights. The room fell completely silent. Every eye followed him as he removed his leather gloves with slow precision. Vanessa's polished smile appeared instantly. "Mr. Whitmore," she said warmly, almost breathless now, "welcome to Belladonna. This is truly an honor." Ethan looked at her calmly for several long seconds. Then his eyes drifted past her toward Lily, standing near the jewelry counter. "I'm looking for my wife," he said quietly. And suddenly the temperature in the entire room seemed to change. Vanessa Blake's smile faltered almost invisibly, but inside Belladonna Boutique, even the smallest change in expression suddenly felt deafening. Ethan Whitmore stood beneath the golden chandelier, lighting with one hand resting calmly inside the pocket of his charcoal overcoat, his presence carrying the quiet weight of someone accustomed to rooms instantly rearranging themselves around him. No one spoke. No one even pretended to browse anymore. The boutique had become completely still. Vanessa recovered quickly, stepping forward with polished confidence. "Of course, Mr. Whitmore," she said smoothly. "If your wife has an appointment with us, I would be more than happy to personally assist her." Ethan's eyes remained steady on her face. She was already here. Something cold moved through the room. Vanessa blinked once. "I apologize. I do not believe I had the pleasure." Before Ethan could answer, Lily quietly stepped forward from behind the jewelry counter. Her voice trembled slightly. She was the woman in the cream sweater. Vanessa's face lost color instantly. The silence that followed seemed to drain the air from the showroom. Ethan said nothing at first. That was somehow worse. He slowly removed a pair of dark leather gloves and placed them carefully onto the glass display counter beside him. Nearby customers exchanged nervous glances while one associate subtly lowered her eyes toward the floor. Vanessa forced a weak smile. "I see there may have been some misunderstanding." Ethan finally looked directly at her. "My wife called me from outside your store, sounding disappointed," he said quietly. "That is not a word Claire uses often." Vanessa swallowed hard. "Mr. Whitmore, if there has been any confusion regarding our policies? Ethan interrupted softly. He glanced around the boutique. "Interesting word." His calm tone unsettled the room more than shouting ever could. Lily stood frozen beside the sapphire display, while Ethan slowly turned his attention toward the framed black and white photograph hanging near the entrance. His gaze rested there for several seconds. "You still kept the original opening photograph?" he murmured quietly. Vanessa followed his eyes, confused. "Yes," she answered cautiously. "It represents Belladonna's early history." Ethan gave the faintest nod. "Then I am surprised none of you recognize the woman standing in it." The sentence landed like a crack through glass. Vanessa stared at him, not understanding at first. Then slowly, almost painfully, realization began spreading across her face. Ethan walked toward the photograph and lightly pointed toward the smiling young woman, partially hidden beside Eleanor Grant, during the boutique's grand opening years earlier. Claire, younger, simpler, but unmistakably Claire. Several employees audibly gasped. Lily's hand flew to her mouth. Vanessa looked back toward Ethan in complete disbelief. "Your wife?" Ethan turned toward her again. Claire Whitmore helped build Belladonna before most people in this room even knew the company existed. The boutique fell into absolute silence. Vanessa's lips parted slightly, but no words came out, and for the first time that evening, genuine fear appeared in her eyes. Vanessa Blake felt the room slipping away from her one silent second at a time. The elegant confidence she wore so effortlessly only minutes earlier had vanished completely, replaced by the stunned expression of someone realizing she had just humiliated the wrong person in the worst possible way. Around the boutique, customers stood frozen beside glass displays and velvet chairs, absorbing the revelations spreading through the room like wildfire. Lily looked back toward the old black-and-white photograph near the entrance, then toward Ethan Whitmore, her breathing shallow with disbelief. "She built Belladonna?" she whispered softly. Ethan nodded once. Claire and Eleanor Grant opened the first location together 21 years ago in a 700-square-foot storefront downtown. His voice remained calm, but every word carried weight. Claire designed the original customer experience, selected the interiors, trained early staff, and created the company philosophy before she stepped away after Eleanor passed. Vanessa's lips trembled slightly. I did not know." Ethan looked at her steadily. "That much is obvious. No anger, no raised voice, just quiet disappointment, sharp enough to silence an entire room." Vanessa glanced desperately toward the other employees, as if searching for someone to break the suffocating tension surrounding her. Nobody moved, nobody spoke, because suddenly every polished surface inside Belladonna felt different now. The marble floors, the gold lighting, the framed mission statement near the register, all of it had once belonged to the woman they threw out onto the sidewalk because her sweater looked too simple. The front doors opened softly again. Every head turned. Claire stepped back inside the boutique, carrying herself with the same quiet grace she had shown all afternoon. Nothing about her appearance had changed. No designer handbag, no jewelry, no dramatic entrance. Yet somehow the entire room reacted differently now. Employees straightened immediately. Customers lowered their eyes awkwardly. Even Vanessa instinctively stepped backward. Claire paused near the entrance, noticing the silence at once. Her gaze moved calmly from Ethan to the photograph on the wall, before finally settling on Vanessa. There was no satisfaction in her expression, no triumph, only sadness. Ethan walked toward her slowly. "You should not have been treated that way," he said quietly. Claire gave him a small smile. "I know." Vanessa suddenly stepped forward, her voice unsteady. "Mrs. Whitmore, I sincerely apologize." "Had I known who you were?" Claire gently interrupted her. "That is exactly the problem." The sentence stopped, Vanessa cold. Claire looked around the boutique one last time, her eyes lingering briefly on younger employees, standing silently behind display counters. Kindness should not depend on someone's bank account," she said softly, "and respect should not require recognition." The words settled over the room heavier than any public humiliation could have. Vanessa's face crumbled with shame as realization fully reached her at last. She had not failed because she offended a billionaire's wife. She had failed because she forgot how to see people at all. And in that moment, beneath the golden lights of the boutique she once ruled with arrogance, Vanessa Blake had never felt smaller. No one inside Belladonna Boutique spoke for several long moments after Claire's words faded into the silence. The soft piano music still drifted through the showroom, but now it sounded distant, almost fragile beneath the weight of what had just happened. Vanessa Blake stood motionless near the center display table, her carefully polished confidence completely shattered. Around her, employees avoided eye contact, while customers quietly gathered their belongings, suddenly uncomfortable remaining inside a place that no longer felt elegant. Claire slowly walked toward the sapphire pendant one final time. Beneath the warm lighting, the necklace shimmered softly behind crystal glass, exactly as it had earlier, yet the atmosphere surrounding it had changed completely. Lily approached carefully, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mrs. Whitmore," she said nervously, "I'm truly sorry." Claire looked at the young associate and offered a small, genuine smile. "You were kind when nobody else was," she replied softly. "Do not lose that." Lily's eyes filled instantly with emotion. Ethan remained nearby, calm and silent, allowing Claire to speak for herself the same way he always had. That quiet respect between them carried more power than wealth ever could. Near the entrance, a regional executive from Belladonna's corporate office hurried into the boutique, after clearly being alerted by security outside. His expensive suit looked rushed, his breathing uneven. The moment he recognized Claire, his face drained of color. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said quickly, "we had no idea you were visiting today." Claire gave a faint nod. "That seems to be a recurring theme." The executive glanced anxiously toward Vanessa before lowering his voice. "I assure you this behavior does not represent Belladonna standards." Claire's eyes drifted slowly across the showroom. Then perhaps Belladonna should remember what its standards used to be. The words settled heavily across the room. Vanessa finally spoke, her voice fragile now. "I never meant to hurt you." Claire looked at her quietly for several seconds before answering. "I believe you," she said softly. "That is what makes it sad." Vanessa's composure finally broke, because deep down she understood exactly what Claire meant. Cruelty had become so normal inside her world that she no longer recognized it while she was doing it. Ethan gently placed a hand against Claire's back. "Are you ready to go?" Claire nodded once. As they turned toward the entrance, every employee in the boutique instinctively straightened. Not because of billionaire wealth, not because of status, but because humility carried a kind of dignity that demanded respect without ever asking for it. Just before stepping outside, Claire paused beneath the framed photograph from Belladonna's first opening day. She looked at the younger version of herself smiling beside Eleanor Grant all those years ago, and quietly whispered, "We tried." Then she walked into the cool Manhattan evening beside her husband, while the boutique behind them remained completely silent. And that night, beneath chandeliers and polished marble floor, an entire room finally learned that true elegance is revealed not by wealth, but by how gently you treat people when you believe they have nothing to offer. Thank you for watching this powerful story of dignity and respect. If you enjoyed this lesson on character, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell to support our channel.